Welcome to a tutorial on user logins and sessions. Now this tutorial is going to cover a few aspects of PHP. It's going to cover an HTML form that will be submitted, checked whether for presence of username and password. It's going to process this against a database. I'm going to show you how to set your database up with your username and password, how to connect to your database, and also it's going to process a logout function. Obviously we are using sessions, so your user will remain logged in until they press the logout button. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to create my HTML form, and then I'll take you through some of the MySQL things that we are going to set up. Okay, so our HTML form, we're going to have the action going to a page called login.php. We're keeping separate pages to keep it simple, and our method is going to be post. And let's end our form and start creating our input type. That's going to be a text, and the name of this is going to be username. Okay, and we'll break that and we'll say, in fact we can take this, and all we need to change here is this. We're going to create this as a password, and this is going to be called password. The reason we do this is because this will be starred out or circled out depending on which operating system you're using. And finally we are creating a submit button, and the value of that is going to be log in. Okay, so at the moment what we have is let's refresh. We have a page here, index.php, with a username, a password and a login button, which currently goes to a page that doesn't exist. Now let's make it a bit more user friendly. Let's type out labels in here, and we have got it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our login.php page. In fact, no, what we'll do first is I want you to open up phpMyAdmin. If you're using XAMPP, it will be installed by default under localhost /phpMyAdmin. If you haven't installed it, I suggest you Google for it and install it, copy it over to your localhost, your web directory, and you can start using it from there. So we run this. Okay, now basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a new database. So here, create new database. We're going to call this, let's say, PHP. No, let's call it PHP login. Okay, and we click create. Okay, right, we can see it's come up here, and we're going to start creating tables. Now if you're not too familiar with SQL, we've got a basic structure is a database stores tables, and tables store different rows, and the rows store your values. So we're going to have the name of this as users. We're going to say OK. Okay, number of fields. Now what I like to do is when I create a new database, I open up a notepad or a context document, and I note down every field that I'm going to use. So we're going to use ID for a start. We're going to use a username and a password, and there's nothing much else we want at the moment. You can obviously add a username, a first name, a date of birth, depending on your program, but for now we're using these three. So that is a total of 3 fields. Let's go back onto here. That's 3 fields, and that will create that for us. Now we're faced with typing in the field names. We're going to have ID. We're going to make this an integer, and what we want is this is the primary key, and we want it as an auto increment. Now what this will do is every time a new record is created, the ID value will increment by 1. So for example, the first user that registers will have an ID of 1, the second user that registers will have an ID of 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, our next one is going to be username, and our last one is going to be password. Now these can be set as varchars. I'm going to set that as 25 characters, and the password is 25 characters as well, just to be simple. Now there's nothing much else you need to set for these, so if we go down, got quite a small screen here, let's say save. Okay, so once that's saved out, you can come down and see this here. You can insert values in, which we're going to do because we're testing. I will be doing some tutorials, or we'll already have some tutorials up on how to make a user registration form. So this would remove the need for this at the moment. Okay, so the value of our ID we don't need to put in, as it's auto increment. That will go to 1 straight away. Our username, I'm going to say Alex, and my password is going to be ABC. Okay, I wouldn't recommend you ever use that password, but there you go. Okay, so my username Alex, password ABC. I shouldn't have trouble remembering that. You click go, and that's already been stored. To browse, you can just click the browse tab. Let's go down, and we've got username and password as Alex ABC, and like I said, ID has been set to 1 already. Okay, so what we need to do now is we're going to create our login.php page. Let's save this out quickly as login.php. Okay, so we're working with this now. Obviously we create our PHP tags, and we need to take into account some post variables. As in the index we use the method as post, so what we'll be doing is we'll be setting our username as $_post and the name of the variable, which is username, which is found here, and our password is going to equal a post value, and that will be password. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is check that they've entered both the username and the password, because we're not going to start validating the form. It's completely unnecessary unless we know that the user has typed both of these fields in. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to create my if statement, and this is going to be quite big. All the code that I'm going to require after this has been checked is going to go in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if username. Remember, username on its own is a valid true condition. This will be equal to true, and we're going to say and password. So require the username and the password for this to be true and to execute this block of code here. So what we're going to write in here, now we need to connect to our database. So to do this, what we basically need to write is say create a variable called connect, and that's going to be equal to MySQL connect. And inside this we're going to have our first parameter is going to be our host, that is a local host for me. The second is going to be the username, I'm using root, and the password I believe for me may be nothing, but I'll check that in a minute. After this we can say or die, and then what we can do is give an error message. So for example, couldn't connect. So if this in fact isn't my password, I think it might be something else, but I'll give it a go in a minute, then we're going to say couldn't connect. Okay, now we need to select our our database. I'm going to say MySQL select DB. That's another built-in function. As long as you have the PHP module installed. This does come with XAMPP, so if you're using XAMPP you shouldn't have a problem. And for this I'm going to say, I think we've called it, let's have a look, PHP login. So PHP login. So assuming this is all okay, I can add an error message here as well. Couldn't find DB. Okay, so let's refresh our page. First of all, yeah, we'll click login. Now nothing's happened. Let's just edit our if statement. I'm going to say else echo, or rather the best function is die. On its own this will just stop executing anything after this point, after this function's called, and it will also pass a parameter of a message of your choice. So here I'm going to say please enter a user name and a password. Okay, so here to refresh this, we'll resend the data, and we've got this error message. So I'm going to type Alex and 123 or ABC. So let's log in. Okay, nothing's happened, we've got no error messages. That means I've obviously connected okay to my database. And I'm going to stop this tutorial here because I've run over a bit of time, and in the next one you're going to find out how to connect to your database, and we're going to check the username and password. Thanks for watching.